A new executive order, it goes into effect on March 16th, and under this new order, foreign nationals from Sudan, Syria, Iran, Libya, Somalia, and Yemen, all pretty bad places, will not be allowed into the United States for 90 days. We will not be accepting refugees from any countries.
Donald Trump just got hit with something he never expected, and the panic inside the White House is absolutely real right now. Federal judges didn't just block one of Trump's policies. They didn't just issue some routine legal orders that get appealed and forgotten. What happened is far more significant and far more dangerous for Trump's entire presidency. Courts across the entire country just demonstrated they still have teeth. They still have authority, and Trump's assumption that he could bulldoze through constitutional limits using emergency declarations just got shattered in the most public and humiliating way possible. Before we break down exactly what happened and why this matters so much, make sure you subscribe John Brown Show. We're giving you the real analysis without corporate spin. Here's the situation. Trump has been operating under this theory since taking office that emergency declarations give him basically unlimited power. That once he says the magic words, national emergency, constitutional limits don't apply anymore. Congress can't stop him. Courts can't check him. He just gets to do whatever he wants because emergencies require immediate presidential action without normal procedures. Cut welfare spending to punish blue states, declare an emergency, end birthright citizenship that's been in the Constitution for 150 years, declare an emergency, deport people without due process, declare an emergency. Everything Trump wants to do that would never pass, Congress gets labeled a crisis requiring his special emergency powers. And for the first few weeks of his term, this strategy was actually working. Trump would declare an emergency, announce some aggressive policy, implement it immediately, and by the time anyone could challenge him in court, the damage was already done. Even when judges eventually ruled against him, Trump had moved on to the next crisis while his lawyers appealed. But something just changed that's going to define the rest of Trump's presidency. Because courts didn't just express concerns about one policy. They shut down multiple major initiatives simultaneously. They didn't rule tentatively or give Trump partial wins. They blocked him completely. And they didn't do it quietly. They did it publicly and decisively in ways that humiliate Trump and expose his entire emergency power strategy as unconstitutional. Let me walk you through what Trump actually tried doing, because you need to understand the scale of what he attempted before you can appreciate how badly courts just destroyed him. Trump wanted to freeze $10 billion in federal aid to American families, child care funding, cash assistance for poor people, social services that keep vulnerable Americans housed and fed, and he wanted to cut all of it immediately without going through Congress or following any normal budgetary process. The justification? Emergency powers. Trump literally declared that welfare spending in certain states constitutes a national emergency requiring immediate presidential action, which is insane when you actually think about it. These programs have existed for decades. They're not new. They're not sudden crises. They're just government services Trump doesn't like and wants to eliminate. But Trump figured if he called it an emergency, courts would defer to presidential judgment on national security matters and let him gut these programs without congressional approval. And here's the part that makes this even more transparent. Trump specifically targeted Democratic states: New York, California, Illinois, Colorado, Minnesota, states that didn't vote for him, states that actively oppose his policies, states he's been at war with since his first term. So this wasn't about legitimate fiscal concerns or responsible budget management like his administration claimed. This was Trump weaponizing federal funding to punish political enemies, using emergency declarations as a club to beat states he doesn't like, and hoping courts would just let him do it because presidents supposedly get deference on emergency claims. A federal judge in New York looked at Trump's emergency declaration and basically laughed at it. The judge said, "You can't just call something an emergency because you want special powers to bypass Congress. You have to actually demonstrate there's a genuine crisis requiring immediate action that normal legislative processes can't handle. And cutting welfare to blue states because you're mad at Democrats doesn't meet that standard. Not even close. The judge issued a temporary restraining order blocking the entire scheme. $10 billion stays in place. Programs keep running. Families keep getting their benefits. And Trump has to go through Congress like the Constitution requires if he wants to change how federal money gets spent. That alone would be a massive defeat for Trump. His entire welfare-cutting plan just got stopped cold. But courts didn't stop there, because what happened next is what really shows how completely Trump's emergency power strategy just collapsed. Trump tried ending birthright citizenship through an executive order. Let that sink in for a second. Trump attempted to rewrite the 14th Amendment to the Constitution by signing a piece of paper at his desk. Birthright citizenship has been American law for over 150 years. It's explicitly written in the Constitution. Anyone born in the United States is automatically a citizen. That's not ambiguous language open to interpretation. That's clear constitutional text that's been settled law for generations. The Supreme Court has upheld birthright citizenship repeatedly. There's no legitimate legal debate about whether it exists. It's as fundamental to American citizenship law as anything possibly could be. And Trump just decided he was going to cancel it. Through an executive order, without amending the Constitution, without going through Congress, just Trump declaring that a constitutional right no longer applies because he says so. The audacity is almost impressive in how completely it ignores how government actually works. You can't rewrite the Constitution through executive orders. That's not a thing presidents can do. But Trump tried it anyway, thinking maybe courts would be too scared to block him or too deferential to presidential authority. A federal judge in Seattle blocked that executive order immediately, said it's blatantly unconstitutional and violates decades of Supreme Court precedent, establishing birthright citizenship as fundamental law. Trump's lawyers appealed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, hoping for a better result from a different court. And here's where it gets really interesting. The Ninth Circuit is based in California. It's got a lot of liberal judges. Trump loves attacking it as an activist court that just makes political decisions against Republicans. So you'd think if any court was going to block Trump on birthright citizenship, it would be the Ninth Circuit doing it for political reasons. But even the Ninth Circuit, even this court Trump claims is hopelessly biased against him, looked at his birthright citizenship order and said this isn't about politics. This is about constitutional law. And your executive order is probably unconstitutional under the 14th Amendment. You're almost certainly going to lose when this case reaches the Supreme Court. So we're not giving you an emergency stay to enforce this policy while appeals continue. The court basically told Trump his legal position is so weak that letting him implement it even temporarily would be inappropriate. Birthright citizenship stays. Trump's executive order is worthless. And his theory that he can rewrite the Constitution through emergency declarations just got demolished. But courts still weren't done destroying Trump's agenda, because there's also what happened with immigration enforcement. And this is where you really see courts pushing back hard on Trump's methods. Trump wanted to massively accelerate deportations, remove people from the country way faster than the system could handle, skip due process protections that exist to prevent wrongful deportations, just round people up and ship them out without following legal procedures. There was a case involving someone who got wrongfully deported when they shouldn't have been under existing law. A lower court judge looked at the situation and said, okay, you need to bring this person back to the United States immediately because this deportation violated their constitutional rights. Trump's administration appealed that decision and asked for an emergency stay. They wanted to keep the person in the foreign country where they'd been deported while fighting the case through appeals. And the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals said absolutely not. We're not letting that happen. The court literally wrote in their decision that they weren't going to let Trump's administration keep U.S. residents in foreign prisons without due process. Foreign prisons. That's the language the court used. They're accusing Trump of trying to imprison people abroad to avoid constitutional protections that would apply if those people were in America. Can you imagine how devastating that is? A federal appeals court publicly stating that the Trump administration is trying to circumvent American law by keeping people locked up in other countries. That's not normal judicial criticism. That's courts calling out what they see as authoritarian behavior. And here's what makes all of this so significant for Trump's presidency going forward. These aren't isolated decisions from random judges who don't like Trump. This is a pattern across multiple courts, multiple regions, multiple judicial circuits. Liberal judges appointed by Democrats are blocking Trump. But so are conservative judges appointed by Republicans. Courts in different parts of the country are reaching the same conclusions about Trump's emergency power claims. That matters enormously because Trump can't dismiss this as activist judges making political decisions. When courts across the ideological spectrum are saying you're overstepping constitutional boundaries, that's a legitimate legal consensus forming against your actions. That's not bias. That's judges from different backgrounds looking at the same facts and reaching the same legal conclusions. Trump thought he had the courts figured out. He appointed 3 Supreme Court justices during his first term. He got hundreds of lower court judges confirmed, and he assumed that gave him control over the judiciary, that courts would basically rubber stamp whatever he wanted to do because judges he appointed would be loyal to him. But the federal court system is massive. There are still hundreds of judges sitting on courts who weren't appointed by Trump, who don't owe him anything, who have their own understanding of what the Constitution requires. And those judges are willing to block Trump when they believe his policies violate constitutional limits. Even some Trump-appointed judges have ruled against him on specific issues when they thought he crossed legal lines. Because judges aren't supposed to be partisan loyalists. They're supposed to interpret and apply the law, and the law doesn't change based on which president appointed you. This creates a massive problem for Trump's entire second-term agenda, because that agenda is built on moving fast and implementing policies immediately without waiting for normal procedures. Trump wants to cut welfare spending now, end birthright citizenship now, accelerate deportations now. Everything has to happen immediately because Trump doesn't want to deal with Congress or constitutional constraints. But courts are pumping the brakes hard. They're saying you can't just declare emergencies and expect unlimited power. You have to follow legal procedures. You have to respect constitutional limits. And if you don't, we're going to block you every single time. That's going to delay everything Trump wants to accomplish. He wanted welfare cuts implemented immediately, so Democratic states would have to scramble to replace lost funding and look incompetent. Not happening while courts review the legality and hold hearings. He wanted birthright citizenship ended in his first 100 days to show he's tough on immigration. Not happening because courts blocked it and appeals will take months or years. He wanted deportations ramped up to unprecedented levels to satisfy his base. Not happening because courts are enforcing due process requirements. And when you're a president with only 4 years in office before your term ends, time matters enormously. Every month spent fighting courts is a month not spent on other priorities. Every policy tied up in litigation is political capital wasted on legal battles instead of new initiatives. Trump is going to spend huge amounts of time and energy fighting these court orders instead of implementing his agenda. The political implications for the midterms are massive. Trump promised his supporters he would cut welfare dramatically and ramp up immigration enforcement and deliver all these controversial policies they voted for. But if courts keep blocking him, he can't deliver on those promises. And voters notice when presidents can't accomplish what they campaigned on. Democrats are going to hammer this relentlessly. They're going to say Trump's agenda is being stopped by courts because it's unconstitutional. That judges from different backgrounds and different regions all agree Trump is overstepping his authority. That even some Republican-appointed judges are saying no to him, that's incredibly powerful campaign messaging heading into midterms. Republicans in competitive districts are going to have a really hard time defending Trump when courts are publicly calling out his constitutional violations, when federal judges are literally writing that his administration tried keeping people in foreign prisons to avoid due process. That's not the kind of association that helps you win swing voters who care about rule of law. Make sure you're subscribed because this judicial rebellion against Trump's emergency power grabs is just beginning. Courts are drawing lines. Trump is going to keep testing them. And we're covering every development as this battle over presidential authority continues defining his second term.